All over the world, elections are regarded as essential features of democratic governance, so making them free, fair, and credible is crucial.
Absolutely, absolutely, no doubt about that. And that's why electoral reforms, frequently are held to improve on election quality in different parts of the world. And in Nigeria, the Electoral Act 2022 serves as a guide on acceptable framework and, of course, rules in the electoral process. Now, it also clarifies what constitutes breaches and violations of elections.
You're right, Claire. These breaches or violations often attract penalties such as fines or a term of imprisonment or, in some cases, both.
Absolutely. Now, electoral offences in Nigeria, I mean, there's so many of them, but let's just start with the basics that we all know. Voter registration offences in the area of nomination, offences in relation to ballot papers and ballot boxes, disorderly behavior at political meetings, polling stations, improper use of voters' card, impersonation, voting when not qualified. I mean, we call it underage voting. Now, there's also dereliction of duty and, perhaps most importantly, announcing and publishing false results when INEC, had yet to do so.
Other electoral offences include bribery and conspiracy, vote buying, wrongful voting and false statement, voting by unregistered persons, disorderly conduct at elections, undue influence, among others.
All right. I'm sure, Demola, you recall recently the University Don was said to have been sentenced to 3 years imprisonment or 3 years in prison, for alleged electoral offences. Of course, we also heard that he was granted bail on health grounds by a high court, and that's held in Uyo, the Akwa Ibom state capital. But this certainly sends, a message to, all political gladiators and government's stance on electoral offences.
You're right, Claire. The country's electoral umpire, INEC, is in charge of prosecuting electoral offences under the Electoral Act 2022, though several persons recently challenged this role being played by INEC.
So many things have been, things that INEC do that people are beginning to...
Actually, what they are saying is that this role should be separated from that of INEC.
There are other issues that people are calling to be removed from INEC, and they say INEC should be unbundled to enable it perform those very fundamental roles properly. But let me also mention suggestions by many people that have called for the establishment of an electoral offences tribunal. Proponents of this describe it as a very crucial step towards addressing electoral malpractices and, of course, ensuring credible elections.
Yes, Claire, INEC and many other key players in the country's electoral process are also in support of this tribunal. They insist this is really urgent and critical to the country at this time.
So let me just ask a rhetorical question. I'm sure that everyone knows the answer. Who can be guilty of an electoral offense? Sometimes you have this perception that maybe journalists, people like us are not guilty, but that's not true. That's not true. And we hear everyone and anyone, including INEC security officials, political parties, the officials, candidates themselves, observers, both local and international observers. Here comes journalists and media houses, or the general public. So everyone could be, complicit.
So you have to be careful. So today on Good Morning Nigeria, we will be taking a look at electoral offences in Nigeria. Welcome to the program. I am Ademola Adeoye.
And I call him Double A. I am Claire Adelabu Abdurrazak. And I also welcome you to the midweek edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We're very glad that you could join us this morning. And we're live on the network service of the NTA.
Thanks for staying with us. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria, or the network service of the NTA. It's now time for newspaper review.
Thank you for joining us, and of course, our newspaper review. Chukwudi Okodugbaja is right here with us. Chukwudi.
Hello, Claire.
It's mandatory for me to say good morning.
Good morning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Regardless of how we feel.
Always wish us well.
Yes.
Positivism does it. Sometimes when the body creaks, you don't want to know how I've been feeling in the past 24 hours. Demola. I thought you passed it was not even UMT when you wrote the university exam. So which did they jack for there? You don't want to say good morning to Chooks the boy?
I said good morning.
How are you today?
And his name is Ademola.
It's Demo.
No.
It's Demo. You don't hear the phone there?
You lose the meaning and the significance of that name, Ademola.
Thank you, Mama Claire.
No, you need to let him know. So he doesn't,
He knows.
He doesn't.
He does.
Chukwudi doesn't. Chukwudi is a farmer. Let's start with the People's Daily.
I know see your
We're starting with the People's Daily. And the People's Daily, of course, leads with Army deploys 171 troops to Sudan for peacekeeping. Again, Nigerian Army deploys 171 troops to Sudan for peacekeeping. Actually, I'm trying to get out this paper so I could. Okay, just a moment. All right, I'll just quickly get the paper out. We don't have a hard copy. There it is. I'm sorry for the delay. People's Daily: Army deploys 171 troops to Sudan for peacekeeping. Oil marketers oppose Naira for crude policy. It's also there on page 18. Now, INEC picks holes in petition seeking Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan's recall. INEC picks holes in petition seeking Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan's recall. Says it fails to comply with regulations and guidelines. Justice Egwato withdraws from aggrieved senator's case. And we have other stories. 611 health facilities offering TB control services in Plateau. Then there are, of course, Shatima, that is Vice President Shatima, leads FG delegation to Katsina over demise of Governor Ratta's mother. We also have other story there. U.S. imports 2 million barrels of jet fuel from Dangote refinery. And sports festival, Tinubu leads Torch of Unity movement. That story is also on page 8. Okay, we also have other stories just on the front page of the newspaper. Now let's move to New Telegraph. The New Telegraph leads with Constitution review. Reps want presidential governors in local government elections to hold same day. As 40 bills pass through second reading, referred to special ad hoc committee to ratify geopolitical zones. OK, state local government police, special seats for the fiscally challenged, or appeals from election tribunals to be determined before swearing in, and back local government electoral commission bill. There are also other stories. Of course, Senate confirms Onwakuche as new correctional service boss. It's also there. Natasha's recall petitioners failed to provide contact details, INEC, and UK hikes visa fees for visitors, students, workers from April the 9th. Okay. Ademola.
Okay, thank you, Claire. I have the leadership newspaper with me, just above the nameplate. Natasha, petitioners yet to meet recall requirement. Details on page 7. Alleged 33.2 billion arms fraud. EFCC rearranges ex-NSA Dasuki. Details of that story can be found on page 6. Then we have Dangote exports 2 million barrels, 130 million liters of jet fuel to US and Saudi Arabia. Details on page 7. Presidency knocks Obi over democracy remarks. Details of that story can be found on page 7. Constitution amendment, state LG police spark fresh debate as reps pass 39 bills. Details of that major headline there is on page 4. Then we have Super Eagles World Cup hopes dim after Zimbabwe draw. Details of that story also on page 31. Russia, Ukraine agree to Black Sea ceasefire. Details can be found on page 7. Chooks?
Let me pick up the last one you read. Russia, Ukraine agreed to
Black Sea
ceasefire. Remember, that is a very important export route, both for Russia and Ukraine. Actually, when we had a crunch in terms of the supply of bread way back, it was directly, linked to the fact that Ukraine could not send us, is it wheat or
the wheat,
whatever?
Yes, wheat.
Exactly. But the real substance of it is they are finally moving towards rapprochement, towards talking peace. Too many, I might not like the man in
Trump.
the Oval Office so much, but the man says too many people have died needlessly. Economies are being destroyed. And forget all the cyber rattling you're getting from the Kremlin. Mm-hmm. Russia wants the war to stop as well. Because Putin thought it was going to be a swoop, grab and smash kind of thing. It turned out that the Ukrainians were quite resilient. Please let the carnage stop for the sake of humanity. I like the way INEC is telling us that petitioners have yet to meet recall requirements. Mm-hmm. Processes matter in anything. The fact that some people want Natasha out of the National Assembly, if it is her constituents, I'm not going to have any problem at all. But my mind tells me it's not exactly her constituents. So that puts a wild cat somewhere there. And I was talking processes. Just as I applaud INEC for insisting on proper processes, Senator Ogunlewe was talking yesterday about processes and procedures even in our Senate, that they are not exactly what it was when they all started. I remember those days when they would break from 1999, they would break from the Senate, and the reporters would rush to Senator Mike Ajebu, who was chairman of the Senate Committee on Judiciary and Legal Matters, and the kind of clout he exuded each time he explained anything that had some legal. I'm not saying that kind of thing anymore. Please, I'm not denigrating our senators. But processes have to be maintained in running any institution at all. It goes beyond Natasha's recall.
I'm happy you said your mind. So
my mind.
That's
my opinion.
That's a personal opinion.
Yes.
That those who the names, on the recall paper list,
yes,
are not members of our constituent. Yesterday, someone, I think the lead, recall, constituent was on the TV to justify, their actions. Yes. So, well, again, this is out there in public, Bernard. So it's an unfolding drama. It's an unfolding debate.
Let the drama play itself out.
But the issue is INEC has come out to say there is, a lacuna.
Of course,
and
yes.
that the petitioners have not provided detailed information regarding the contact of, those...
I hear it's not a question of gathering signatures from one hole, that it actually has to be from...
The Constitution is very... And the drafters of our Constitution, we always call them the wise men. They know these things would happen, so they didn't make it quite easy.
Exactly.
So it is like we say in our local parlance, it's not momoy. You must go through the routes and prove that, yes, these are real constituents, that are engaged in this recall process.
You've joined them in pronouncing route as route. The Americans are taking you over.
Well...
It's okay. It's an aside.
I'm sorry.
Dangote is exporting 2 million barrels, 130 million liters of jet fuel to U.S., Saudi Arabia. Aramco is even being linked to Dangote in spite of the fact that they're in the Middle East. Even in the world, the Saudi oil giant is... look at how this man is putting us on the map of the world. I'm looking at that as a great promotion for us. What do you think?
Yeah, it is. It is.
It is.
It is.
It is a wonderful promotion for
the
us.
export to Saudi Arabia specifically.
I'm glad in as much as, it means FDI for us.
Of course.
Yes, in as much as...
It's foreign exchange for us.
Big
deal, Claire.
Yes, it's a big deal, and as long as that comes in, it's fine for us. But I don't know if you deliberately avoided the lower riders to the Natasha's recall. Senator Nweboin Ezekwesili in verbal war at hearing. And I see that a lot of people are just debating whether the way the former minister, spoke was actually an insult, or was it just an English phrase? Because when you say, "Oh, Chukwudi, shut up," it's not an insult.
It's not an insult.
How do you mean?
No. It depends on the context.
Africa?
No, listen.
You want me to tell you the story of one Benin man that went to visit his brother in UK? And one of the man's sons called him James.
If I'm having an
And
argument...
he told him, you shut up. You can call your father his name.
No. It depends. Again, it depends on the context. Let's not talk about...
You have just said it now.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Context.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Let's not, discuss it out of context. So it depends on the context. If I say, Demola, shut up, no, that's not an insult.
She's telling you to shut up, and you're taking it light.
That's not an insult.
Okay.
That's because it's a friendly remark. But when you say...
That is in the context.
Shut up.
If we are having a friendly discussion.
Yesterday I was praising Osimhen's 2 goals.
No, I don't want to talk about it.
No. I said I was praising his 2 goals against Rwanda.
Can we dismiss Chukwudi?
Well, don't come again.
It's time to wrap up.
Zimbabwe.
Chukwudi tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow. I don't want to talk about Zimbabwe. Goodbye. Let's take a short break.
She's Zimbabwe shy.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria and live on the network service of the NTA. We're having fun here just before the start of our conversation. But again, let's begin with our background report. Just a reminder, our conversation is on electoral offences. What constitutes electoral offences and how do we deal with them? Ibrahim Belogunda has the background report for us.
Since the advent of Nigeria's 26-year democracy, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and the National Assembly have reformed electoral laws and regulations designed to address the flaws experienced in previous elections. Electoral reforms are carried out with the belief that a new electoral legal framework will address the problem of election manipulation, electoral impunity, operational inefficiency, and weak democratic institutions plugging Nigeria's electoral process. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended The Electoral Act, as amended, and the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) rules and regulations constitute the legal framework which regulate Nigeria's electoral process. However, breaches or violations of some of these provisions often attract penalties, which on conviction may be a fine, a term of imprisonment, or both. Any conduct, action or inaction which is prohibited by the Constitution or the Electoral Act and a breach of what attracts punishment is called an electoral offence. Of recent, one electoral issue that has continued to generate discourse is the process of recalling a legislator in Nigeria, as the Constitution makes provision for the recall of members of the National Assembly and State Houses of Assembly in Section 69 and 110, respectively. Implementation, however, is where the problem lies, and there has not been a single case since 1999, 26 years and counting, where a legislator has successfully been recalled under the Constitution. The recall process in Nigeria can be segmented into three main parts: submission of a petition signed by more than 50% of registered voters in the legislator's constituency, verification of the signature by INEC, and the conduct of a referendum. How effective has electoral reforms been in Nigeria? Do electoral breaches or violations attract the necessary penalty? What is the process of recalling a legislator in Nigeria? These and more will form basis of discussion on Good Morning Nigeria.
Well, thank you, Gunda, for the background reports. Seated in the studio, we have Ezenwa Nwago, Chairman, Partners for Electoral Reform. Ezenwa, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Okay, good to have you. Also, we have in the studio, joining us, Barrister Adamu Mohammed, former Majority Leader, Kogi State House of Assembly. Honorable, you're welcome.
It's the pleasure of being here again.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Good.
Yes, and I'm glad I'm the one introducing our guests joining us from Benin. It's been a while since it left INEC. Uluwole Osaize Uze, immediate past Attorney General of Edo State, former Director Legal and former Director Voter Education and Publicity, INEC. Of course, he joins us from our Benin studio. Barry Sauze, it's good to see you again.
Good morning. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Let's just kickstart with Ezenwa. I mean, from all the happenings that, you have observed, being an electoral person, can we say that the electoral process has actually been made any significant progress since the Electoral Act of 2020?
2022.
2022, right? Okay,
Yes.
2022, yeah.
Well, I think, broadly speaking, there's been some shift.
Okay.
The needle has been shifted a bit, but as you know, this is a sociological enterprise. So you keep pushing, you keep trying to make it better. But the significant things for 2023 was, for me, the introduction of technology that helped to minimize voter identification theft,
Okay.
which is the BVAS, and what that did significantly was that the humongous figures that we see that are thrown in from some states in time past, you were not able to see that really that much in after the 2022 amendments. But the perennial issues of logistics, the challenges of behavior or misbehavior of the politicians and their candidates are things that are not legislatable.
Issues of bribery and...
That's what I'm saying. Those are attitudinal issues. So you can't pin them to 2020, whether the 2022. But significantly, I will agree that the 2022 amendment was meant to be some kind of watershed in terms of
our leap to better organized elections, and I think that happened.
Okay, thank you, Ezenwa. Let me, since we're dealing with electoral offences, I'd like Mr. Osaze Uze to, enlighten us more. It's not as if we do not know some of those, people might consider, minor. But of course, in terms of impact and what they do to the integrity of our electoral process, it's huge. But please remind us again, what are the fundamental offences that could compromise the electoral process?
Thank you so much. The Electoral Act, Part 7 of the Electoral Act deals with electoral offences. That said, one must take note that there are other offences created under different parts of the Act. And each offence is important, each offence is it's an offence basically, but Part 7 contains quite a number of things, and they deal with things like offences relating to registration. For example, if you register more than once, if you have in your possession more than one voter's card, all those are offences. One of the most fundamental that I think it's more observed in breach than anything else is voter inducement, what you call vote buying. The law doesn't call it vote buying, it's called voter inducement or bribery of the electorate, where you offer people money or some kind of advantage, wrapper, salt, condiments, so that they can vote for your candidate or for your political party. That, I think, it's one of those things that we've not really been able to address effectively. It's still, in almost every election, we still see quite a bit of it. People say it's because of poverty or whatever else, but the statute, the Electoral Act, makes it an offense to induce voters, when it comes to votes, for them to vote for one way or the other. So you have other things like a blowing of siren within polling units, offences relating to polling units, having political meetings in the vicinity of polling units on election day. You have broadcasts less than 24 hours to the election, or on election day when you wear your party insignia, or maybe you carry a broom or carry an umbrella in such a way that you're reflecting the symbol of a political party. All these are offences, but there are quite a number of them where you prevent somebody from voting or entice him to vote in a particular way. These are all offences. So Part 7 contains quite a comprehensive set of rules of the do's and the don'ts on election, both on election day, pre-election, and even post-election. Post-election, when you announce results, you're not entitled to announce results, or when the return officer announces the wrong results. All these are offences, but we have seen from petitions and we have seen from complaints of the electorate that quite a number of these things are being observed more in their breaches. One that excites me is Section 120, which we have not explored too well. And Ezenwa talked about logistical challenges, for example. Now, if you come late, if an official, polling official, or even a security agent, if you come late to your polling unit, that is an offense. It's called a dereliction of duty. Any official engaged in the conduct of election who comes late or who derelicts his duty one way or the other commits an offense. That's Section 120 of the Electoral Act. That has not been explored too well. I can't recall anybody who's been charged under that section, for example. So these are just a snapshot of some of the offences that are created by the Electoral Act. And don't forget that although these are Electoral Act offences, there are also other offences, disorderly conduct at polling units, disorderly conduct at election rallies. All these are offences, but some of these things are also offences under the criminal code or criminal law of the various states and under the act as other acts as well. So it's in addition to all other offences.
For that, your perspective. Let's come back to the studio now and to Barrister Mohammed. Would you say there has been a positive response from the political players towards these electoral offences?
I thank you so very much.
Yeah.
Legislative speaking, the document, the Electoral Act we have today as it is constituted, is very close to perfection. As my personal opinion, as a player too, it can, pass through a test of perfection to some extent. look at what my colleague from Benin had just said. It is in all ramification, there are provisions to take care of the challenges we have in our electoral system. But unfortunately and regrettably, the problem we have is implementation. We have deliberately, I would say, we have deliberately refused to implement this law. If you do, even a quarter of, acceding to what the law says, we will not have problem we're having in the system today. Politicians, the players, are deliberately bypassing these provisions.
How?
Okay. Now, 2022 amendment talks about beavers. How are we complying with it? Transmission of result, how are we complying with it? Somebody will just stay somewhere and result will just rain in like water. And there's no way to sieve it. And there are laws. The extant law are potent enough to sieve it. Deliberately, they refuse to sieve it. If they implement the provisions of the Electoral Act to the letter, things like this will not happen. Vote buying that I talk about, vote buying or influencing
or intimidation
is very, very common. Very, very common every place you go. It's not limited to a particular state. Everywhere. And somebody is up there trying to protect in quote, the criminals. Because they are on a mission. They are even paid to do it. They know them and they give them the results. So they will do everything to block the implementation of the law to their benefit. They want to persistently remain in office. And what they do to achieve that is to bypass these very beautiful provisions. When 2022 Electoral Act was passed, I celebrated. Looking at the theoretical aspect of it, our problem is, a solution to our problems were here. Unfortunately, during the election, you notice that nothing has really happened, as if those amendments were not made. What we have to do much more is how do we implement our law. It's not even limited to Electoral Act. All other laws in this country. People are deliberately, bypassing the law. The judiciary is even not helping the matter. I told my friend, we're discussing recently, I said, the judiciary is losing it. I'm not very proud of what the judiciary is doing in Nigerian politics today. I'm not very proud. Because they are bypassing these laws. We don't have problem with the extant Electoral Act. What we have is about implementation. That is my own opinion.
All right, Barrister Mohammed, thank you. And I just, let me come back again to Mr. Magu. And I don't know what your views are about the quality of the Electoral Act provision with regards to electoral offences. If you look at both in content and in context, and then the penalty stipulated, do you have a contrary view?
First, I think we deodorize, there is some kind of deodorization of crime when it comes to elections. So you call it offense. So you put some perfume on it, but as if it's no longer crime. We are talking about voter inducement, for instance. What does that mean? You subvert the choice, deliberately subvert the choice of people in determining who leads them. And you don't consider the consequences of that. Right? So the man who made the law, in most cases, are the purveyors of the crime. What do I mean? If you go to where the law is made, who do you meet there? The politicians. They contest election, they belong to parties. And so if they want good laws, if they want good elections, they will... Honorable was talking about, how how everything seems to be around implementation. No, if you have good laws, the consequence of that is that even if you don't implement, someday, it's just like saying this is a crime, but because nobody has been arrested, then you continue to. One day you'll be used as a test case to show that law, So it's better to have those laws. So we have laws, but some of them are, a slap in the wrist. You can commit those crimes and put the fine in your back pocket.
Yes, that's...
If you are arrested, you pay. You just bring the fine from your back pocket and pay.
And direct voting, for instance, I hear it's 100,000 or something.
That's what I'm telling you. That so, the shame of it is that it is so deodorized in a way that nobody feels a sense of crime. So we have an attitude to election generally that offenses or crimes committed during election are called electoral offenses. So if I slap somebody on election day, it's no longer assault. It is now it is offense. But our laws, our wider laws, whether the penal or what do you call
penal
it?
code.
Yes, are already replete with things that can deal with crimes committed during election. But because it is our interest to create a sociological blanket that closes the eye away from how these crimes affect us, the politicians who make the law then create this kind of situation that you have where people feel comfortable. Leave and no be election. After election, everything go past. So the law enforcement person has a mentality that it is election. The DPP believes that is election. So after a while, you remember there were people who were arrested in Imo at some point. Immediately after, they entered whatever for them, and they were freed. So our attitude, we first need to change our attitude to crimes committed. So because when you go into the substantive breakdown of what constitutes a crime, if you have observed the election where the communities provided canopies, people come and sit down, write their name down in open glare, write their name down,
eat
and then food and drinks, which is treating. It is an offense. And people, so both the law enforcement agents participate in the eating.
Exactly. What is the offense if a community, maybe within an area, for instance, during election, and a particular community of people decide that, okay, just to while they wait the time
to
encourage people to come out,
and to stay
okay,
to
we'll just
defend their
build
votes
tents within the space permitted, and then you sit down. No one is inducing you, but food. Everybody.
I've just told you,
what?
You cannot bring food within food and drink. Is not permitted.
Is that
is
part
in
of
the law?
electoral
Is in the law. That's what I'm telling you, because it's
That is part of the inducement.
Is inducement.
And
So
some of them, their intention.
Because listen, the sacrosancy of choice. That's what we are dealing with. Once you subvert the right, that your choice is no longer election. So what do? You bring a register, and then when you come, you write your name. What are you writing your name for? Attendance to who? So the big issue is that, for me, we need to just change our attitude to elections.
But as one, before you continue, I'm sorry to jump in. I was just wondering, in crafting and drafting the Electoral Act 2022, I mean, one would suppose that civil societies, and of course
media.
electoral. Yeah, no, well, don't call the media. I'm talking civil societies like yourself. You know,
why are you excluding
we are
the
part.
media?
You're part. You're
Why are
part.
you
You
excluding
are part
the
of
media?
that process. And Osaze will tell us whether or not, you know, in crafting, you know, both the title, the content, the quality of penalties, whether you were not part of, not you as Ezenwa, civil
I
society and
understand.
civil rights, yes.
Now, let me
Whether you were not part of that process.
I will explain this to you, because don't waste your time.
No, because we'll let us Osaze
it's
to tell us.
It's fine.
Yes.
He should have even
Yeah,
explained.
no, because
Then
he.
now.
No, don't worry.
Let Osaze tell us before Ezenwa will explain.
Okay.
Because
All right.
Ezenwa is shifting the blame to politicians and
I'm
probably.
not shifting the blame. I will explain.
Barrister Osaze, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Well, I think in the consideration, both in conceptualization and in the execution of the process of birthing the 2022 Act, there was wide consultation. There's a series of seminars, workshops, series of meetings, series of consultations between the executive, the legislature, INEC, civil society, even the media. Apart from the quarterly meetings which INEC used to have, I think still does have engagements with the media and civil society. The National Assembly itself had public hearings on this bill. There are very few bills that have received the kind of widespread consultation and inputs from civil society, from political parties, from all stakeholders as the Electoral Act of 2022. Very, very few indeed. So to answer your question pointedly, yes, there was widespread consultation, and all segments, all critical stakeholders had their say in getting this act passed.
Yes, I'm back because yes.
Watch what the former Attorney General said. Consultation. That's where your work. See, you cannot go beyond your reach, beyond your role. There is somebody who has responsibility. Look, we want to do this, we want to do this. These are rituals. In the legislative treadmill, you come and play a role to fulfill the conditions necessary for making the law, which is that there has to be public hearing, there has to be this and that. You have to bring. Have you seen the quality of public hearings? Have you been there?
But civil society
wait.
is also supposed to hold INEC accountable.
INEC does not make law. Why INEC does not? INEC is the law is made to guide INEC. INEC makes suggestions as a practitioner. Okay, you are here in NTA. You know what goes on. But if you go to NBC, you are making a suggestion to NBC. The ultimate responsibility to make regulations lies not with you, the practitioner. It lies with the person. So it is your experience that you are going to take to the practitioner and say, look, I have, but ultimately, who then makes the regulations? Who then makes the law? So the point I'm making is that for civil society, many times people give us roles that we don't have. And sometimes there's even an arrogance that comes with our role. We feel that we can do much more than, you know, where the role that we have, you know, allows us. What we are given in the period of lawmaking is to appear in public hearing, submit a memorandum. Okay? When you have done that, they go into the business of making law. Then it shifts from you to where? To assenting, where the president agrees or doesn't, and you know what happened with the Electoral Act. 6 times the president refused to sign that law. Eventually, even the members of National Assembly, many of them do not know what was signed. So I don't want to go into, you know, the nitty-gritty of it, but I needed you to appreciate that. Don't give people roles. You give them, you wear them robes that they don't have, and
maybe it is you that assume the arrogance of rules, because you did say it.
No, that's what I'm saying. That sometimes we even, you know, begin to feel that we can. There is something after all your English. Okay, you have a role. You are not a member of the National Assembly.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Barrister Mohammed, some people have actually raised the issue of the need to unbundle the role of INEC in this. For instance, they said that according to some report, lack of separate electoral offences commission with powers to arrest, investigate, and prosecute electoral offenders has hindered efforts to hold perpetrators accountable. What's your view on that?
I think I should accept with that. And INEC has a lot of responsibility already. They have a lot of responsibility. I'm aware there was a bill for Electoral Offences Commission. I don't know whether it has been passed. There is always a resistance to making this particular law because of the interest I told you about. My friend here is an advocate. What he's saying in essence is that there is room for improvement. This is one area. This Electoral Offences Commission, their role should be specifically how to arrest, investigate, and prosecute the offender. If their responsibility is limited to that, there will be a positive shift towards implementing this law. The major problem we have now, according to my own personal view, is not with the context or the nature of the law as it is.
Okay.
The problem is with the implementation. This school of thought are in line with my own position that if you do that, there will be their only responsibility to implement this law. And to some extent, it will solve the problem we are facing. I agree with them entirely.
Okay. Thank you, Barrister. Sorry, yes, I want to bring in Osaze, and I'm just trying to get the penalties, and I'm wondering how those penalties and the fines were arrived at. For instance, in terms of votes, just a moment, in terms of multiple and underage voting, penalty attracts a fine of 100,000 naira or 12 months in prison. Ballot box snatching and destruction, just 24 months in prison. And vote buying and bribery, which you talked about earlier on, as very fundamental, which we have not been able to address. Now, those courts face a fine of 500,000 naira or up to 12 months imprisonment. And this is what everyone says. I mean, these are punishments that you could just put your hand at the back of your pocket and then pay off. How did we arrive at such a ridiculous, fine?
Ridiculous, but we have to put things in context. The Electoral Act of 2022 was not a revolutionary act. We did not reinvent the wheel. And this is why it's quite right when he says that INEC does not make law. It can only offer suggestions. Similarly, civil societies can only offer suggestions when it comes to public hearings and they submit memoranda. Now, every law must be taken into the environment, the context in which you find it in. Don't forget that we've always had electoral acts. We had the 2000 Act, the 2022 Act, the 2021 Act that was significant portions were nullified by the courts. So we had to have the 2002 Act. Prior to that, we had the decrees, 1999, 1998, 1999. We had decrees, which similar to an act, which for each set of elections. All these are carryovers. All these, most of these offences and most of the punishments are carryovers from the earlier acts. And one significant thing the 2022 Act did was to up the ante in terms of the amount of money to be paid as fines. And in some cases, they even removed the option of fines. Say you pay both a fine and go to prison. There are several clauses or several sections of that act that say so. So if you destroy ballot papers, for example, there's an offense. But compare it to what you have in the criminal code or in the criminal law of some of the states of the federation. You'll find out that there are similar punishments. The idea sometimes is that, well, if it happens on election day, it should be more significant. There should be higher punishments. But these are the kind of punishments you find in all your penal legislations. But don't lose the trend that sometimes it is not so much the fine you pay that can be a deterrence or a lack of it, but also the stigma of having been convicted. You are now an ex-convict. You are convicted, even if they say pay 1 naira fine, you are now an ex-convict. If you are convicted, for example, for an offense involving dishonesty, let's say in an election or any other time, you are disqualified from contesting elections. So that is the significance of making penal provisions. 500,000 for voter inducement for certain classes of people is significant. For what I might term the retailers, those who go to polling units and pay, many of them are the foot soldiers. For a multi-millionaire or a billionaire party leader, it may not be anything. And that is actually our challenge, is to go after the wholesalers, to go after the people who bring out the money from the banks, not those who distribute it. There are several layers of distribution. So we're not going to go to the retailers, the people who are in the polling units. We should go for the source itself. 500,000 might not be much for them, but if you are able to apprehend those retailers, those people in the polling units who are distributing 30,000, 10,000, 15, or whatever it is, then if you don't get those soldiers doing it, then the big men will not have to come out and do these things themselves. But for them, it is the fact that there's a conviction and there are certain things you cannot do. There's a certain stigma that attaches to being an ex-convict. If you sue for libel, for example, you don't have a reputation. So even if I've libeled you, if I've defamed you, and ordinarily they might give you 100 million naira, they say, look, you have been defamed, but you have no reputation. You have no integrity because you're an ex-convict. They'll give you 1 naira, a symbolic peppercorn fine to say that, look, this is what the value in the eyes of society, in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of people, of the public, this is what you are worth because you have no reputation. So that is a significant part of it. And the issue is, I think the challenge more is enforcing these provisions, challenging, getting people to face trial and convicting them. And if I may just go a little bit and retrace our steps a little bit and talk about Electoral Offences Commission, yes, that's correct. If you look back, you'll find that the Lemu Commission recommended it. The Nnamani Commission recommended establishment and drafted a bill, although it merged the Electoral Offences Commission with the Political Party Registration Commission. The Uwais Commission had earlier on, so more than 3-4 commissions have actually gone, not just suggested it, but both Uwais and Nnamani, I'm aware, drafted bills to establish Electoral Offences Commission, apart from the private member bills that several legislators had sponsored. But unfortunately, none of them have seen the light of day. But those who are opposed to them argue that, look, yes, but we have also seen what anti-corruption agencies done, selective justice. It's only used against opposition parties, and I have personal experience of that happening a great deal, even in my state. A lot of people are being apprehended, and it will appear witch hunted. So those who are opposed to Electoral Offences Commission often raise that as an issue, that how do we guarantee the independence of such a body, and how do they go after not just the opposition but also those who have benefited and are in power? How do we deal with those issues? These are the kind of conversations we should be carrying out now.
Also, just a little more on that, and I'm wondering what the what the objective of the fines, may be, because the weight of the fines would probably serve as a deterrent. But in this case, the weight of the fines that we see, provided by the Electoral Act, are so so simple and so, I don't know, it could barely serve as a deterrent. And I'm just wondering if it has actually, if the objective is being realized before we even look at, the enforcement of it.
Well, it depends. Should the cat come first or the horse should come first? Have we succeeded in apprehending people, charging them to court and securing conviction in the first place. It is when you do that and you see the significant numbers of people are paying the fines and walking free, is when you do that and you say, oh, maybe we should act, there should be a deterrence in terms of the value of the fine that should be paid by offenders. And you seem to be concentrating on the fine, and I'm taking this conversation to the punishment of imprisonment and the stigma of having being convicted, being an ex-convict. People are more afraid of going to jail, and there are several sections in that law that doesn't give the option of fine, or as I said, fine is additional to a jail term, and incarceration is more of a deterrence than the fine. So don't concentrate on the financials of it. That is important. That could be a deterrence. But jail time, you said, okay, the significant jail time should be spent, people should be incarcerated for such offenses, all well and good. So maybe we should do away with the fines and limit it to incarceration and leave out the option of a fine. But if a retailer, for example, is somebody who has 500,000 naira and he's at polling unit and distributing to voters, and you find that person, maybe he should be graduated. Maybe those who have brought the money from their bank accounts and who are giving at ward level, who are giving at constituency level or central district level, maybe those are the people, and then you graduate the fine to say, look, and most of the time, by the way, it's a maximum fine. And if you look at the previous acts, look at the 2010 Act, the fines in the 2022 Act are significantly, have been significantly upwardly reviewed. But don't concentrate too much on the fine. Look at the incarceration, look at the punishment, and the issue really is taking people and charging them to court for these offenses. Let us get that addressed, and then the second part will now address that part of, are these fines enough? Are they sufficient deterrence? But to me, the significant deterrence is actually the incarceration. It's a term imprisonment that you will serve for committing these offenses.
I think we should look at every aspect. It's a whole. I mean, that's why they are there. That's why the Electoral Act provided for those fines. If we don't look at the fines and then we look at the enforcement, then we're not taking the provisions of the Electoral Act 2022 as a whole. So I think it is good for us to look at the quality of the fines, and then we look at also the enforcement, whether or not it's been properly enforced, and then we look at what to do. Demola, please.
Anyway, the point is made. I mean, he talked about the issue of stigmatization and all that, but he raised one particular issue which I want Ezenwa to speak on. You were going to comment on what the barrister said the other time concerning that unbundling the INEC duties there. But the issue of selective justice, I also want you to speak on that.
Well, I think Honorable did covered the field a bit, but I used to be excited about this Electoral Offences Commission. I used to be very excited, especially when you see that it became a catch in terms of Justice Mohammed Uwais Electoral Committee recommended it. Namani, Justice Lemu, Electoral Valley, all of those commissions. But I just worry about how quickly we are always interested in outsourcing a responsibility that is somebody's job. The Police Act and Honorable and the former commissioner would correct me if I'm wrong. The Police Act says that the police shall enforce all laws. Shall enforce all laws. That act is subsisting, meaning that whether it is election or whatever, the police has a responsibility to ensure that, crimes committed are well taken care of. So when we begin to now create new institutions, the politicization of it becomes another challenge. And we always solve problem by creating another one. That's what I've seen us do all the time. In wanting to solve a problem, we create a new one, and then we now want to go back to where we left before. The same place we were before we created that problem, we want to go back there. So my sense is it possible that we resource the police in a way that helps them to prosecute crimes committed during election? Because no matter what you do, the current regime of modes of appointment for public officers in Nigeria is that the politicians do that. It is not taken away from the politicians. So whether it's the president that is appointing, nominating, the president nominates, sends to the president a politician, sends to the National Assembly another set of politicians with interests. When they create that commission, they will have a reason to create it. And then it now takes me to where you are going. The independence of those institutions, the depth that they carry, the gratitude that they owe the people that appoint them, how does it reflect in selective justice? So what do I mean? I'm appointed the chairman of Electoral Offences Commission. I know no matter what you say in Nigeria, there's a depth that comes with that. And many times, you want to satisfy the people, the interest that brought you there. So, at least we know that the police has wide powers under the law. Is it possible to create an electoral police? This is just a thinking. What do I mean? We used to have railway police, a department that is for railways, a police department with a commissioner. Those guys were the ones following the rail. I know as a young person growing up, we used to follow train from Zaria to, so you have railway police. If you are caught committing offense within the corridors of the railway line, whether from Zaria to, Aba, along those corridors, if you commit a crime, the railway police arrest you. They have their, detention. So is it possible we have a full commissioner for, electoral issues, so that first the challenges, the complications of, how we run even offenses. For instance, you deploy policemen during elections. Some of them are brought from outside of their cities where they work, and then they apprehend an offender. After apprehending the offender, they hand the person over to a particular station and then go back to their base.
The commissioner, is it a standalone or under which institution?
No, it will be a police.
Okay.
It will be
under the police.
Yeah, it will be. So you don't create, at least you manage what you already know about police. Whatever it is you know about police, you manage it. Than creating a new institution that will now go to what Barrister Osaze Uzi talked about, selective, where people, because of the depth that they owe, even when they veil it, they try to mask all of that. At the end of the day, he who pays the piper detects it too. So whether you are responding to the patronage of the politician in the National Assembly or the patronage of the nominator, the one who nominates you, you are going to have to deal with issues of selective justice. That's for me easy. So I'm today now, I'm not excited. I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not very excited about any electoral offense, because I see us always, and once somebody says something, there is no longer deep thinking around that thing. Since Justice Uwais recommended it, can you contemporize that commission 2007 recommendation? Can you bring it into contemporary, dynamics that have played out in 2025? Justice Lemu,
like what we're having right now.
Yes, Justice Lemu committee, Namani committee. most of the time there is not a lot of it. Is okay, Justice Uwais recommended it's a very fine thing, but the if you check all the processes that come through it, many times it is garbage in, garbage out. Not really deep thinking around how we resolve those issues.
I like your idea of the commissioner, you know, a dedicated commissioner. But what will constitute the duty of the commissioner within the electoral process?
His job is the same thing that, see, what do you have? Barrister Suzy can correct me if I'm wrong. You have a directorate of legal whatever in INEC that the Electoral Act now says the police will, you know, investigate and then send the file
to INEC.
To INEC. No, so the question you ask is, what is the budget of that directorate? The budget of that directorate is what a senior advocate of Nigeria, you understand, will one senior advocate of Nigeria, the whole budget of the directorate, one senior advocate of Nigeria would have it, you know, bring it out without qualms. So with that kind of lean budget situation, that department is already incapacitated to be able to even function from the beginning. So if you have a department of, you know, electoral, just call it, you can fine-tune that, call it electoral police or whatever, with a commissioner, that commissioner will be financed to, now, even if you were brought from Bauchi to come and conduct election as a policeman, he can hold you down, because in Bauchi there's an electoral police department. In Imo there's an electoral police department. Trim, efficient, you know, that just deals with this. So it's not from the bloated idea of creating jobs and all of the rest of them. There is a sort of deep thinking can come into that, because once you create your Electoral Offences Commission, people in that commission will not be void of politics. And if it is not void of politics, then you cannot have the kind of thing. Already people are talking about a mode of appointment for INEC, mode of appointment for resident electoral commissioners, take it away from, you know, the politicians and find a more neutral platform. There is that argument. So you now want to create another who creates National Assembly. So if they are careful in coming into that, it is because they are afraid. The politicians themselves have a fear about creating, because the Pharaoh that does not know Joseph might come to power and they become victims of what they created. So it is, you see that Honorable is a politician. I don't know the hue of the politician, but I think he's a progressive politician. They are always thinking about dubious advantage. So if you have people who consistently think about how to gain advantage, you understand, making a statesmanly law, making a statesmanly institution is not something that is in their.
But even your fears about even your fears about the Electoral Commission Tribunal, you know, yes, the office of the Commissioner of Police, you know, will not also be foolproof.
I said whatever my position.
I said whatever fear you have about police.
His thinking is very ingenious.
Yes.
But unfortunately, from the grapevine, I heard that even INEC has the same problem. INEC have the same problem. When a PA to a governor is appointed as INEC commissioner, and tomorrow he will go and serve his august interest, it's happening. We are in the state of anomy, really. The problem in our hand is massive. But we shouldn't be afraid of that to try to solve the problem we have. One person will come one day. We discussed this issue, I think about a few days ago. I told my friend, I'm a Muslim. There's a part of the Quran that God says that in Nemal Usur Yusra, it's after difficulties, there will be ease.
That is light at the end of the
Exactly. Story. It is only God Almighty. It's a divine responsibility. Something will happen tomorrow. But we should keep on making our own efforts. People are scared of the police more than any institution in this country now. If you are giving that responsibility to the police, they will say hallelujah. If you have a new commission, at least they will try to impress the world. We are doing our job. The first election, the second election, before the infiltrate. But what you said about Pharaoh and Moses, is very, very possible. I don't know why that bill, they did the second reading, I followed it. It died. Because they are afraid of that Moses in Pharaoh's house. You know, in politics, they are progressive really. I think I should be I cannot be judging my case. There are things we did when we were there, people are not doing now. I'm even afraid to go into politics. Because the excesses, the extremism they're going to now is scaring. If you think about this life, you think about that too. If you are a believer, a Muslim, a Christian, you know that there is a judgment after death. But a lot of us politicians are not thinking about that. They don't even think about God. They think that they are God. And that is why we're having this problem.
Do you think there is need for us to, because some people are saying that let's strengthen this electoral process again and
exactly, we'll continue to make effort.
Yes, because that's what they're saying.
We should continue to make effort. And law is an instrument to bring about changes. We shouldn't be afraid. If there are complaints about other commissions, EFCC, ICPC, we have fears about INEC too. Some people say that they are not fair enough. They are only fair to the government in power.
So, Barrister, I'd like you to quickly, in 2 minutes before we take our break, to clarify between the commission, which has been suggested, and the Office of the Commissioner of Police, electoral matters, which Mr. Wangwe is suggesting. I want you to clarify the pros and
The police is overburdened already. The psyche of Nigerian masses about the police is a problem. How many offenders have been arrested so far in the last election? Arresting. He said some people were arrested. They charged them. A commissioner brought in only to stop These are the problems. I don't know whether there is one singular or 2 or 3 persons that have been prosecuted.
Yeah,
and that is my preamble. Our problem is implementation. Forget about the fine. That you have been convicted is enough. It's not about money. It's not a money-making venture. It's not the money that scares them. It's a conviction. As a politician, anybody that is active, those boys they are sending, they want to be councillors. They want to be appointed as supervisors. If you are convicted, the implication is that you can't be councillors any longer. They will be scared. If one person has been used as an example, it is enough restraint. If you say we'll be scared of, like that is the problem we had about police, state police too. Well, there is a fear that the state governors will. This is a problem of a country.
I think the fine and conviction should be a strong deterrent. Once we combine both of them, they fear. A politician.
I agree with you completely. I agree with you. But the issue is that this act was passed in 2002. There was election in 2003. There are other some regional elections.
2022.
2022 election was 2023. Isn't it? There were some other regional elections after that. How many people have been arrested? How many people have been prosecuted? How many people have been charged? How many people have been convicted?
There are convictions in Kano. There are people who have been, but it's far.
That is it.
It's far in between. But the bigger question, which I think Honorable is addressing, has more to do with attitude. Until that, you see, you can be saying whatever. If as I told you now,
okay, NBA, we will come back to that attitude issue after this break. So, I will take a break now. After, we'll continue our discussion. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. We are still on the discussion of on the electoral reforms or electoral offences in Nigeria. Okay, before we went on leave, on break, anyway, you were talking about the need for us to change, have this attitudinal mindset change. So can you just...
Let's the elasticity of what you call offences, electoral offences. Let's take inducement, for instance. What does the law say? At what point does the law recognize inducement? Because it's important. The law does not, like I said, treating, which is the sharing of food and drinks within the presence of the polling area, is an offense only to the extent that it is done at the presence. So if I cook food in my house, which by all purposes is inducement, the law does not, you cannot come and arrest me that I cooked food in my house and people came to eat. Now there is front load. I don't know what word to use now. They pay ahead. The vote by now, some no longer pay at the polling unit. They collect the bank account of the people and wire money into the accounts. So yes, you can come and say I paid money into somebody's account, but I'm a philanthropist. I'm a good man. I give my people money. Governors start road projects 3 months to elections, scatter a road that is even good, and start grading it all towards election. It's voter inducement.
So how do we prove it?
No, the point that I'm telling you is that me and you know. You are now talking about proof. That is the attitudinal part of it. So when you are legalistic in your thinking, you may not be able to solve the problems that confront you in the process of legalizing your thinking, legalizing the actions. There is more conversation around how do we even perceive our country? What do we want?
Because prosecution is based on
evidence. No, that's what I'm telling you now. So if if by the nature of the crafting, because you are the one who has been raising crafting, the nature of the crafting have already subverted, the ability to stretch that very thing. Because the people who draft it, they know these things. It is about hoeing to your side, Any lawmaking that is about hoeing to your side cannot bring public good. Lawmaking must lift itself above benefits. About what am I going to benefit? It has got to be with what would the society benefit. But that's not the kind of thing that we are seeing. Appointments are hoeing to your side. Appoint somebody to benefit you. Barrister talked about people appointing people with partisan inclinations, clear partisan inclinations. They are appointed into sensitive organizations like
But
like
how
INEC.
do other countries, prevent or prosecute electoral offences?
See, a country is run by law and order. The difference between us and other those places you are talking about is, see, if you are stopped for traffic offense, you don't say I'm sorry. There is no I'm sorry.
Yes.
There is no let me call your boss.
Yes.
Let me call your boss. Then when you call the boss, you say, okay, Eze is an active civil society. Please let him go. There is nothing like that. When they give you ticket, you go and pay. There is no English. So the challenge with us is that we are not a law and order country.
Exactly.
We are emotions play, primordial sentiments, atavistic considerations. All of those things play in our life, and we must come to terms with it as a people, that it is a hindering factor in terms of building the kind of country that we want. So it's not, when you say how do other people do it, it's about law and order. If the police today in Nigeria decide to do the work of police on just issue of traffic offense, you will have less than 200 vehicles moving in Abuja.
Okay, let's bring in Barrister Oze. Barrister Oze, I would like to hear your own views about, of course, the suggestions that have come from the studio. Either setting up a commissioner of police in charge of electoral matters, or the election tribunal commission.
Two issues. The tribunal is slightly different. The tribunal deals with the adjudicatory part of things. It deals with trying of offences. And yes, some think it's fanciful. It's a suggestion that has been made that should have special courts. The tribunal deals with the adjudicatory part of the equation, while the commission will now have powers to arrest, powers to investigate, and powers to prosecute. As Ezenwa said, it was quite seductive a few years ago to talk of an independent commission. And if you ask the average policeman, he will tell you that, look, there's no need for ICPC, there's no need for EFCC, there's no need for civil defense, and there's no need for road safety commission. All those are basically functions of the police, and the police can handle all those things. So we go back to what led to the establishment of these agencies. Was it just a job for the boys and girls, or was it as a result of a lack of confidence, or was it as a result of the wide span of the police, and they were not as efficient in dealing with certain things? So it's the jury's out as to whether you should have a separate entity or not. But don't forget that INEC itself has also been at the forefront of calling for establishment of a special offences commission. But the truth of the matter is that whether you give that role to the police or whether you give it to a separate, distinct, independent agency doesn't really matter. The fundamentals are still there. Why it's so seductive to call for independent agencies these days is because of the perception of the role of the police. People have lost confidence in a lot of our state institutions. In any state where you have, like my own state, for example, do you know how many commissioners of police we've had in the last, especially in lead up to the elections and immediately after? In almost every state where there are going to be elections, you have 5, 6 different commissioners of police in the space of less than 1 year. And take a vox populi. How do people perceive the police in terms of their impartiality, in terms of their independence, in terms of their professionalism, especially when it comes to generally, but more specifically when it comes to election duties. The governor is the chief security officer. He calls the security council meeting, and the commissioner of police, the brigade commander, and people like that are all part of that. And people see this and say, they're talking about how to secure things, when the governor in many instances is the chief perpetrator of electoral. He's the godfather of in terms of those who are going to try to rig the elections to maintain his hold on power, either for a second term or for his preferred candidate to be there. The truth is that the attitudinal issues have to be addressed. Unfortunately, it's not something we can address in one year, in 2 years. It takes a much longer time. And but people are clamoring for a change. Whichever way it is, there should be a strong, independent force. It can be in the police. It can be situated in the police. And we in advanced countries or in more advanced democracies, you do have equivalent of railway police. You have campus police. You have all sorts of arms of the police force, all under a general umbrella of securing society. Unless and until you have decent, independent-minded people who will do the job as envisaged under the Act, you're going to have problems, whether it's with the police force as it is, or whether it's about an independent agency. I think Barrister Mohammed made reference to something like that, look, if it's a new agency, independent agency, they will try to impress the public. And, well, history tells us, history validates his position. When road safety started, everybody knew they would not take bribe. Especially on that showing card, they will not take bribe. They will not do this. They are very, very professional. Are they still so today? I'm not being uncritical of these institutions, but I want people to decide for themselves. Civil defense, did they impress when they first established, and are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? EFCC, what is the perception? And don't forget, look at the EFCC, for example. Why is it that just about every person who has headed that agency has not ended very well, has not ended their tenure and gone quietly, starting from the initial chairman of the commission, Nur Ribadu, the President NSA. How did he end up? His successor, Madam Waziri, how did she end up? Lamode, how did they end up? All of them go one after the other. How did they end up? And what is responsible? Why the serious turnover, and they leave office not in the way they themselves would have desired? I'm not criticizing them for any wrongdoing or anything else, but is it the politics? Is it the occupants? Is it the office itself? All these things are important things. ICPC, are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? What is the measure of their success? Have they achieved what they were set up to achieve? Do we need so many different agencies? Do we need more agencies, or we need to concentrate You're talking of unbundling of INEC, for example. That is creation of more agencies out of the commission. And electoral offences is just one of them. There's political party regulation and supervision and superintendent. That is another part of it. Is it a question of the span being too wide for one agency to control, or is it inherent inefficiencies in all our systems? So whether you have it as a separate Electoral Offences Commission, as a separate agency, or as an arm of an existing agency, some people even suggested that a body like the EFCC's jurisdiction should be amended and then it should be expanded. They work with the INEC, for example, in trying to control vote buying now and movement of funds. And there are overlaps there. So it doesn't matter really, as long as you get quality and caliber of people, and it's professional, it's independent. They're not beholden to their appointing authorities. But that's a far cry from what the reality on ground. So this is important consideration.
Okay, Barrister, what other strategies do you think can be adopted to actually, minimize these electoral offences? Because we know it cannot be eradicated, but we can minimize it.
The only way you can minimize it is to use the law. And these are the problems we are having with the laws that we have today. As my colleague here said, the problem we largely have is about our attitude.
Besides attitude now.
Besides attitude is the law. It's the only law that can bring about the change. We are in a democratic environment. It is the only law. It has to pass through all the processes of lawmaking. Like they are saying, INEC was just making contribution. But they don't make law. NGOs, the same thing. They will be advocating. If it comes to making that law, the people that are involved are the participants in the political process. So they will always want their interests to be protected. You understand? So that is why it has to go down to attitude. Unless our attitude change, we'll continue to have this problem. That is my own thinking. Because the problem is not with the law we have. This law, this INEC, Electoral Act we have 2000, if you take it to a decent state or country, they won't have any problem.
So how do we navigate from this attitude to address, let's even begin to address the low-hanging fruits. How do we begin to navigate from this attitude to a law-driven country?
So, like I said, a law and order society. We see them now. Our people travel there. They travel there. They queue. They carry their bags themselves. Okay? They stay true. Whether you are president, you are. The only exceptions are members of the armed forces. People who society value. Not that you are a politician. You come to the airport, you bulldoze everybody. Law and order society is helpful. But there is a place for civic education, not voter education. Now, there are places where they have people they call civic educators. And that ordinarily should be located in what we call the National Orientation Agency. But go and look at the budget of that National Orientation Agency. Because many people always throw responsibility to them and say, oh, the National Orientation Agency should, what you are saying is the national. But the politicians, what is the envelope that they put in the National Orientation Agency? That is critical. These civic educators should be salaried people whose job is to unpack the consequences of what these things that we are talking about, whether they are voter inducement, whether they are law, and all of that. But we are not going to fund that agency. We will never fund that agency. We will fund defense. We will put all our money in defense, and then we don't fight anybody. We are still terrorized by everything.
Security now.
Yeah, security, and all of that. But the one that has the capacity to unpack, we will not put money there. NTA.
What's the role of
hold on. See, my role, I'm talking about NTA now. You have shut me up.
No, you didn't.
No, I wanted to say, institutions like this should be competing with the CNN of this world in terms of the resources that you put into this place, because it is the place If you go to Kebbi this morning, people are listening to us. If you go to Ife, Mbise in my own community now, people are listening to us this morning. Yes, the capacity, the power that you have, if it is harnessed for public good, in terms of changing mindsets, the result will be massive. Will be massive. So we are not, as a people, so when you say law and order, if a police, we were somewhere in Maryland in the US, a very senior friend of mine, we went somewhere into a pub, his friends were drinking, he was not drinking, and I know he drinks, so why are you not drinking? He said those characters outside there, they are waiting for us. Immediately we come now, they will test us for alcohol. If you are smelling alcohol in Nigeria and you are driving, the people who should check you will ask you for if the bottle is remaining. So we have a matter of law. So it's not just law. The laws are there. That's what Barrister and Barrister Uzi have been trying to push. These laws exist in its quantum, but the big issue is, what are we thinking? As a people, how do we even see this? If you are stopped by a policeman, you get angry. That's the first thing that happens to you. You are angry. Why should he stop you? But he has a responsibility to stop you. You go to airport, somebody is holding tissue paper. The toilet is not clean. He's holding tissue paper and greeting you, good morning, sir. Welcome, sir. With tissue paper in his hand. He has not first done the job. Because while he is put in that toilet, his thinking is that he's there to make money. So we have to recalibrate in terms of what we even want as a people. Politician, civil society. You say, what's the role of civil society? I've said, every opportunity you give to us to come here is an opportunity to amplify our voice. That's what you have done. It does not go beyond that. The next step is, if you refuse to hear us, we protest. If we protest, there is a limit to your protest, because it's a means to an end. It is not, you are protesting to draw attention to something. After you have protested, if the people you are protesting ignore you, you are on your own.
Like they always do.
Like they do. So you have a role, but are you afraid of playing that role? If you invite me here 10 times, I will be here 10 times, because I see the enormous potential that this vehicle affords to be able to change mindset and change thinking.
All right, Tesama, thank you. Let's quickly get Barrister Uzi's closing wrap-up. And, just like you to speak more on what, apart from funding, how do you think that NOA can also assist in, navigating this attitudinal mindset? Apart from funding, how NOA can also...
Thank you. It's very difficult for you to implement your ideas if there's no funding. So really, we must talk about funding. But the first thing I agree with you is to get the ideas going. What can we do to start changing people? And I think the leadership, the NUA should talk to the leadership. If we don't see ostentation amongst our leaders, for example, then people will now start arranging themselves. If they see, I remember a person who carries his briefcase and things like that, and he doesn't do what we call the big man, there's no big man syndrome and things like that. Leadership is so critical. People will tend to follow. And initially there will be some resistance, but I think with time, with efforts, and with these ideas permeating, we've got to have these ideas permeating our society. When we see our leaders, we try to copy our leaders. If you elect a councillor who you're walking around taking Uber together, and all of a sudden you see him building a big duplex and he's driving the latest model of a Mercedes, then the wrong signal is being sent. Money is all okay. I want a share of that, and democracy dividends means give me a bit of the money, kind of a thing. So it's a long drawn out thing. It's not something that can happen overnight, but it's something with time and with proper leadership guidance and stuff like that, we can begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Leadership, it starts from the top,
yes,
and then cascade downward.
Yes.
So what is your last
to build on that, in 2015, when President Buhari was sworn in, there was this phrase, body language. Temporarily, people were scared. They said the president's body language. Unfortunately, it didn't last long. If from the leadership from the top, we get it right, it will be very easy for everybody to fall in line. Apart from that, you look at the village you are coming from, you look at the traditional rulers in our villages, they have a role to play. If you check now, traditional rulers will not give chieftaincy title to a decent person if you don't have money. We have to start from there. Anybody that is being vested with a traditional title anywhere in Nigeria today, check.
I'm a traditional title holder.
I am too. I am.
So you have money?
No, it's a family thing.
Oh, okay.
It's a family
Because
thing.
you just said it.
Yeah, exactly. And what I'm saying, my own is a family thing.
You have less than 30 seconds.
Okay. Don't obstruct me. Another level we have to go is to the family. The family, like I have many children. In most cases, I don't ask them to do things. I will start doing it. Daddy, go and sit down now. They will take over and they will do it. Tomorrow they will do it because they wouldn't want me to start doing it again.
So leader by example.
Example.
All right. Thank you so much, Barrister Adamu Mohammed, former Majority Leader, Kogi State House of Assembly. Thank you for your perspective on this issue this morning.
Thank you so much.
We want to also thank Ezenwa Nwagu, Chairman, Partners for Electoral Reforms. As usual, thank you. And from Benin, Mr. Oluwole Osaze Uzi, immediate past Attorney General of Edo State, former Director General Legal, and former Director of Voter Education and Publicity, INEC. Thank you so much, sir, for your contribution. Well, that's how far we came. That's the conversation this morning. Thanks so much for staying with us. I am Ademola Adeoye.
And I'm Claire Adilabu Abdurrasak. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.